there, time for timer, your roving reporter. I'm talking to you from inside a fantastic factory, your digestive system. You know what we build here? You! Not out of wood or metal, but out of food. You see, you are what you eat, from your head down to your feet. Things like meat and eggs and fish you need to build up muscle tissue. Uh-oh. Hello, appetite control, more protein. We need energy. Playing tennis today, you know. Whoops. All these motors in your body need a lot of fuel to go on, like carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, vitamins, and so on. What's left over forms the building blocks you need, indeed, to grow on. Yes, you are what you swallow, so that next time you feel hollow, don't just fill your face with any old kind of treat. This goes for every kid or 6-foot athlete. All you really are is what you eat. Bang, bang, bang. Oh, howdy, partner. Time for timer. Do you ever get that hungry feeling after school? Boy, I do. I'm so hungry, I could eat a wagon wheel.
When I'm slow on the draw and I need something to chaw, I hanker for a hunk of cheese. When my 10-gallon hat's a feeling 5 gallons flat, I got something planned, which is little cheese sandwiches. Come on! Here's a great little snack to tide you over till dinner. If you want something delicious and nutritious, cheese is a super snack. Look, a wagon wheel. When my get up and go has dried up and went, I hanker for a hunk of cheese. When I'm dancing, I hold down and my boots kind of slow down, or anytime I'm weak in the knees. I hanker for a hunk of, a slabber, slice, and chunk of, a snickerdee is a winner, and yet won't spoil my dinner. I hanker for a hunk of cheese. Yahoo!
Hi, time for timer. What? No time for breakfast? Now look, since 6 o'clock last night you haven't eaten a bite. Come on, I'll show you why that's really not the way for a growing kid to start a busy day. Here we are inside your body, and this noisy empty space is your stomach getting angry because there's no food in the place. Uh-oh, let's find some food fast. Now listen, I don't want you to think this is the best way to eat breakfast, but in case you can't cook, and if you haven't time for a good cereal and a well-balanced meal, then this quickie breakfast is better than nothing at all, okay? Hey!
Good morning. I'm starting a little bit later than I wished. It's really amazing how difficult it is for me to make a thumbnail. Well, not to make one, but to choose what to make. And how many lack of Saturday morning serial / TV cartoon pictures there actually are artistically. Which makes me wonder, is it's for some reason, there's something in the water back then that made 80s people not good artists. Speaking as an 80s person who's not a good artist. So I recorded the first 6 chapters of The Wisdom of Solomon. I ended up reading it from Hippolytus, who was quoting it. And I said, what is this that he's quoting? This is not the Bible. And then I looked it up in Wisdom of Solomon, which, from what I can gather, apparently the consensus is that it was written in Alexandria by Messianic Jews. And but as I read it, I mean, it's so clearly Messianic. I have a hard time believing that it's not written by 1st or 2nd century Christians, because they're referring to Messianic. It's full of Messianic language, and but also stuff about persecution. Now, when they're talking about persecution, they're talking about what they know about what happened with Jerusalem and Antiochus Epiphanes and the Seleucids and this sort of oppression that they suffered there. But it really makes me want to read more into the likes of Philo and some of these early, these Jewish scholars that were right on the cusp of Jesus coming into the picture. Jim, what's up, man? You know, that cartoon thing I put on, there's a couple of different eras of that, but I don't know if you remember that one. Did I just undo my tab? Here we go. Yeah, good to see you, Jim. And I don't know. I might do these just out of curiosity. Like, man, I don't know. Maybe I'll make it like a Saturday thing. We can recycle that thumbnail and check out some of these. I've still never. I know. I think I've tried to get through Maccabees a couple times, and I know I ended up never finishing it. Some of these are pretty short, so depending on how long it takes me to finish this, I only have about 3 hours left on my StreamYard, so I'm kind of burning that off too because it starts over in a few days. But we might go through some of these other ones as well. But at this point, again, I was so amazed that this sounds so much like Jesus when you read some of these. And again, generally, this stuff was written by likely Jews in Alexandria who were Messianic. And maybe, you know, they were looking forward to Jesus. This is their way of expressing it. Again, this is not scripture. It's just it's interesting to read what the thought of people were, and also considering that after Messiah came, there are various scriptures as well that the greater Jewish scholarship completely shifted on their interpretation of, to say, well, that's not Messiah. That's talking about somebody else. That's talking about Solomon, or that's talking about Hezekiah. It's not talking about the Messiah, because if so, that would mean that the Messiah is Jesus. So we couldn't have that. So I started. Originally, I accidentally recorded chapter 6 first, which then I went back and recorded from chapter 1 to 5. Now I've just patched up my recording. So now I've ended on chapter 6. So, and this thing has about. This thing has 19 chapters. So we have a little ways to go. And the last one that I recorded was
of the people. Receive therefore instructions through my words, and it shall do you good.
Receive therefore instructions through my words. So I believe that's the ending of chapter 6. And they shall do you good. Yes. So we're on 7. Now, part of me resents the fact that, you know, it would seem like whoever wrote this, I guess, tried to pass it off as if it was written by Solomon, but I don't think so. I mean, it would surprise me. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what necessarily the literacy or ignorance level was of Jewish people when this was written. But to think that somebody was going to write something and then try to slip it into the greater cultural awareness base of Jewish people at the time, say, "Oh, here now," but was because people do that stuff today. Oh, look at this secret thing that we've just dug up. We've just found this secret wisdom of Solomon nobody knew about, and tried to slip it in as if they could pass it off and pull it off. Or was this a sort of literary, just fad? Of, again, putting people's names on things and just calling it that and being like, oh, this is the wisdom of Solomon. You know, like Solomonic, almost like Solomon has become like an adjective for really great wisdom. Like, oh, like Solomon could have said, like, that wisdom is so great, Solomon would have said something like that. And because I think the similar thing about the book of Enoch, because I don't believe that Enoch from pre-flood days wrote the book of Enoch. And if you read it, it's written to, is that included in this? Oh, I don't want to get sidetracked. Okay, so we're going to go through chapter 7. And also keeping in mind when it seems like when Hippolytus was witnessing to Jewish people in the 220s, he was quoting this to them. Now, I don't know if that necessarily means that he believed that this was scripture, or if he was just quoting this to them because he knew that they used this. I don't know. Chapter 7. And I used to show the recordings on the same screen as this, but it messes up the sound levels. I myself also am a mortal man, like to all, and the offspring of him that was first made of the earth. And in my mother's womb was fashioned to be flesh in the time of 10 months, being compacted in blood of the seed of man, and the pleasure that came with sleep. And when I was born, I drew in the common air, and fell upon the earth, which is of like nature, and the first voice which I uttered was crying, as all others do. I was nursed in swaddling clothes, and that with cares. For there is no king that had any other beginning of birth. For all men have one entrance into life, and the like going out. Wherefore I prayed, and understanding was given me. I called upon God, and the spirit of wisdom came to me. I preferred her before scepters and thrones, and esteemed riches nothing in comparison of her. Yeah, so it seems to me that this is supposed to be Solomon talking. And Solomon, I would imagine, Solomon who famously prayed for wisdom, and God gave him the wisdom and said, you're not praying for riches and glory and all this stuff. You're praying for wisdom. It's a good prayer. The wisdom of the Lord. So obviously, and again, I can't say this person is trying to falsify this as Solomon, again, which I think would be pretty absurd for somebody to do in 2nd century Alexandria, rather than it just being a writing, just like people make writings today about stuff. And maybe they were Orthodox Jews at the time that saw this as something like we see, like the cabin. Like, because there are some Christians that are like, oh, read the cabin, it's so great, it's so biblical. And it's like, it's kind of not. And you have this kind of back and forth. So it's likely something like that.
Comparison of her.
Neither compared I unto her any precious stone, because all gold in respect of her is as a little sand, and silver shall be counted as clay before her. I loved her above health and beauty, and chose to have her instead of light. For the light that cometh from her never goeth out. All good things together came to me with her, in innumerable riches in her hands. And I rejoiced in them all, because wisdom goeth before them, and I knew not that she was the mother of them. I learned diligently, and do communicate her liberally. I do not hide her riches. For she is a treasure unto men that never faileth, which they that use become the friends of God, being commended for the gifts that come from learning. God hath granted me to speak as I would, and to conceive as is meet for the things that are given me, because it is he that leadeth unto that's gonna have to do.
God hath granted.
God hath granted me to speak as I would, and to conceive as is meet for the things that are given me, because it is he that leadeth unto wisdom, and directeth the wise. For in his hand are both we and our words, all wisdom also, and knowledge of workmanship. For he hath given me certain knowledge of the things that are, namely, to know how the world was made, and the operation of the elements, the beginning, ending, and the midst of the times, the alterations of the turnings of the turning. I don't know why I said turnings.
The begin.
The beginning, ending, and the midst of the times, the alterations of the turning of the sun, and the change of seasons, the circuits of years, and the positions of stars, the natures of living creatures, and the furies of wild beasts, the violence of winds, and the reasonings of men, the diversities of plants, and the virtues of roots. Of all, nope. And all such things as are either secret or manifest, them I know. For wisdom, which is the worker of all things, taught me. For in her is an understanding, spirit.
Which is
For
them I know.
For wisdom, which is the worker of all things, taught me. For in her is an understanding. Did it again. For wisdom, which is the worker of all things, taught me. For in her, with loud vehicles driving by, must be a party letting out. For wisdom, which is the worker of all things, taught me. For in her is an understanding spirit, holy, one only. Hold on. What is this saying? In her is an understanding spirit, holy. So, like, understanding spirit. How to get that right? It's not going to sound right.
I know.
For wisdom, which is the worker of all things, taught me. For in her is an understanding spirit, holy, one only, manifold, subtle, lively, clear, undefiled, plain, not subject to hurt, loving the thing that is good quick, which cannot be letted, ready to do good. Kind to man, steadfast, sure, free from care, having all power, overseeing all things, and going through all understanding, pure and most subtle spirits. This subtle word is really bothering me. Is it subtle? Should I just pronounce it subtle? I pronounce it subtle, and now I pronounce it subtle, so I'm going to have to go back and redo it. Subtil. It's just archaic. Subtil. Mit vel funga fanga full mit große Sorge voll. So it's German. Used optionally to refer to things whose natural gender is masculine. So it doesn't mean subtle. It means subtle. Fineness, cuteness, and subtleness of an argument. Subtle. It's not, okay. Subtile. I never knew this word existed. It's a whole different word than subtle. Wait, cunning, subtle, elusive. Yes, it's the same. Man, I hate language. Subtle, subtle,
Pure and most subtle.
subtle. I'm just saying subtle, not doing it. Pure and most subtle spirits. For wisdom is more moving than any motion. Sheep. That's good.
For
Wisdom is more moving than motion. For wisdom is more moving than any motion. She passeth and goeth through all things by reason of her. Try that again. For wisdom is more moving than any motion. She passeth and goeth through all things by reason of her pureness. For she is the breath of the power of God, and a pure influence flowing from the glory of the Almighty. Therefore can no defiled thing fall into her. For she is the brightness of the everlasting light, the unspotted mirror of the power of God, and the image of his goodness. This language, again, I can't help but be reminded of, hey, what's up, Bernie? Yeah, this totally sounds like Hebrews. And again, talking about the actual Messiah, the offshining of his glory, the image of the invisible God here. Now, when this says she, this is just simply referring to this persona or anthropomorphized or gynopromorphized wisdom, which again, I think the most interesting part of this is just if we're looking at how these 2nd century BC Jewish people, the way they regarded what they were looking for in a Messiah. And I don't think it was necessarily a woman Messiah, obviously, but that's where language sort of fails us when it says she, because I think if somebody was speaking that actually, like I think when a Spanish speaker is like I don't think in Spanish the is a L and la. Now I don't think you say it. You don't say her or him when you're referring to a masculine and feminine, but they don't associate. At least they didn't in normal times associate any of that with a male or female like person. It was just the gender in itself. Gender was just simply this binary plus the neuter, and again, it didn't even make sense all the time. Such as the word El Mapa. Like, that always got me on tests. Like, El Mapa. Like, okay, all these rules you just taught me, Spanish teacher, are out the window. El Mapa. What is that? But anyway, the point is, when I think when a Hebrew speaker, or whatever this was written in, probably Greek actually, a Greek speaker was reading this with the she, they probably weren't. Well, I don't know. You know what? I don't actually know. I'm not going to even speak to that because maybe it was unusual to refer to, even if you're referring to a feminine noun, to refer to it as a she, like this is writing. But again, it does that in Proverbs as well. And again, I don't think that there in Hebrew they would have looked at it like, oh, he's referring to a woman rather than just this something that we don't really have a modern concept for, maybe.
His goodness.
And being but one, she can do all things, and remaining in herself, she maketh all things new. And in all ages, entering into holy souls, she maketh them friends of God and prophets. For God loveth none but him that dwelleth with wisdom. For she is more beautiful than the sun, and above all the order of stars, being compared with the light, she is found before it. For after this cometh night, but vice shall not prevail against wisdom. So yeah, make all things new. Now again, these are all hearkening to earlier scripture verses, I'm sure. Whoever wrote this wasn't ignorant of it. Chapter 8. Wisdom reacheth from one end to another mightily, and sweetly doth she order all things. I loved her, and sought her out from my youth. I desired to make her my spouse, and I was a lover of her beauty. Okay, I guess everything on that I just like obvious. Say, well, I don't know if he means that this is literally a woman. Okay, I take all that back, and I'm an idiot. Yes, clearly I loved her and sought her out for my. And again, just like wisdom described in, like so that there's a notion of this, but again, I think it would have been recognized that this didn't mean that there was an actual female spirit. That this is a literary device, is my point.
A lover of her beauty.
In that she is conversant with God, she magnifieth her nobility. Yea, the Lord of all things himself loved her, for she is privy to the mysteries of the knowledge of God, and a lover of his works. If riches be a possession to be desired in this life, what is richer than wisdom that worketh all things? And if prudence work, who of all that are is a more cunning workman than she? Worksman. Let's try that again.
And if prudence.
And if prudence work, who of all that are is a more cunning workman than she? And if a man love righteousness, her labors are virtues, for she teacheth temperance and prudence, justice and fortitude, which are such things as men can have nothing more profitable in their life. If a man desire much experience, she knoweth things of old, and conjectureth aright what is to come. She knoweth the subtleties of speeches, and can expound dark sentences. She foreseeth signs and wonders, and the events of seasons and times. Therefore, I See, the first grade trying to teach me. This rule is eternal. We accept this word that.
And times.
Yeah, and then you read like Shakespeare, who's supposed to be like the guy who like invented English class, right? Like he spelled horribly. That dude didn't know how to spell. He spelled like half the words wrong. Everything's a lie. Education is a lie. Spells fire with a Y. It's like a 6-year-old.
Times.
Therefore, I proposed to take her. Is that proposed or purposed? Oh man. Lying educations. Purposed, proposed, purposed. That is purposed, right? Therefore, I purposed to take her to me to live with me, knowing that she would be a counselor of good things and a comfort in cares and grief. For her sake, I shall have estimation among the multitude and honor with the elders, though I be young. I shall be found of a quick conceit in judgment, and shall be admired in the sight of great men. When I hold my tongue, they shall bide my leisure, and when I speak, they shall give good ear unto me. If I talk much, they shall lay their hands upon their mouth. Moreover, by the means of her, I shall obtain immortality, and leave behind me an everlasting memorial to them that come after me. I shall set the people in order, and the nations shall be subject unto me. Horrible tyrants shall be afraid when they do but hear of me. I shall be found good among the multitude, and valiant in war. After I am come into mine house, I will repose myself with her, for her conversation hath no bitterness, and to live with her hath no sorrow, but mirth and joy. Now when I considered these things in myself, and pondered them in my heart, how that to be allied unto wisdom is immortality, and great pleasure is to have her friendship, and in the works of her hands are infinite riches, and in the exercise of conference with her, conference.
And in the
And in the exercise of conference with her, prudence, and in talking with her, a good report, I went about seeking how to take her to me. For I was a witty child, and had a good spirit. Yea, rather being good, I came into a body undefiled. Interesting. Was this supposed to be like, again, the person writing this, I mean, I'm hoping he wasn't writing this under some kind of like stuporous trance or something. It was like, I'm literally channeling Solomon. But again, but rather that this is like sort of a filtering through just this guy's, whoever wrote this' lens, or whatever school of people wrote this lens of what they were viewing this sort of messianic, mystical speech. But this came into a body undefiled. I'm wondering if that's sort of like, I don't know, sounds like virgin birth. That's why there's some parts of this I'm like it's so crazy that Christians didn't write this. Speaking about Jesus, or that now sometimes it sort of starts to tumble into prophetic language when you read Proverbs and Psalms, and all of a sudden it's talking about Messiah.
defiled.
Nevertheless, when I perceived that I could not otherwise obtain her, except God gave her me, and that was a point of wisdom also to know whose gift she was, I prayed unto the Lord and besought him, and with my whole heart I said, interesting break-off. Chapter 9. O God of my fathers, and Lord of mercy, who hast made all things with thy word, and ordained man through thy wisdom, that he should have dominion over the creatures which thou hast made, and order the world according to equity and righteousness, and execute judgment with an upright heart. Give me wisdom that sitteth by thy throne, and reject me not from among thy children. For I, thy servant and son of thine handmaid, am a feeble person, and of short
For I, from among thy children.
For I, thy servant and son of thine handmaid, am a feeble person, and of a short time, and too young for the understanding of judgment and laws. And though a man be never so perfect among the children of men, yet if thy wisdom be not with him, he shall be nothing regarded. Thou hast chosen me to be a king of thy people, and a judge of thy sons and daughters. Thou hast commanded me to build a temple upon thy holy mount, and an altar in the city wherein thou dwellest, a resemblance of the holy tabernacle which thou hast prepared from the beginning. And wisdom was with thee, which knoweth thy works, and was present when thou madest the world, and knew what was acceptable in thy sight, and right in thy commandments. O send her out of thy holy heavens, and from the throne of thy glory, that being present she may labor with me, that I may know what is pleasing unto thee. For she knoweth and understandeth all things, and she shall lead me soberly in my doings, and preserve me in her power. So shall my works be acceptable, and then shall I judge thy people righteously, and be worthy to sit in my Father's seat. For what man is he that can know the counsel of God? Or who can think what the free... There I go. There's phantoming words
For
in it.
what man
For what man is he that can know the counsel of God? Or who can think what the will of the Lord is? For the thoughts of mortal men are miserable, and our devices are but uncertain. For the corruptible body presseth down the soul, and the earthy tabernacle weigheth down. Yeah. Oops.
for the corrupt
For the corruptible body presseth down the soul, and the earthy tabernacle weigheth down the mind that museth upon many things. And hardly do we guess aright at things that are upon earth, and with labor do we find the things that are before us. But the things that are in heaven, who hath searched out? And thy counsel who hath known, except thou give wisdom, and send thy Holy Spirit from above? For so the ways of them which lived on the earth were reformed, and men were taught the things that were pleasing unto thee, and were saved through wisdom. Saved. Salvo. Salve. Salve bene est. Chapter 10. Chapter 10. Chapter 10. Nope. Still sound like a jerk. Chapter 10. 35:50. It's not going to be Saturday morning. She preserved the first formed Father of the world that was created alone, and brought him out of his fall, and gave him power to rule all things. But when the unrighteous went away from her in his anger, he perished also in the fury wherewith he murdered his brother. For whose cause, the earth being drowned with the flood, wisdom again preserved it, and directed the course of the righteous in a piece of wood of small value. I'm going to read that whole thing over again because I was kind of processing it as I was reading it. Pauses, I think, were like artificial. She preserved the first formed Father of the world that was created alone, and brought him out of his fall, and gave him power to rule all things. But when the unrighteous went away from her in his anger, he perished also in the fury wherewith he murdered his brother. For whose cause, the earth being drowned with the flood, wisdom again preserved it, and directed the course of the righteous in a piece of wood of small value. Moreover, the nations in their wicked conspiracy being confounded, she found out the righteous, and preserved him blameless unto God, and kept him strong against his tender compassion toward his son. When the ungodly perished, she delivered the righteous man who fled from the fire which fell down upon the 5 cities, of whose wickedness even to this day the waste land that smoketh is a testimony, and plants bearing fruit that never come to ripeness, and a standing pillar of salt is a monument of an unbelieving soul. For regarding not wisdom, they gat not only this hurt, that they knew not the things which were good, but also left behind them to the world a memorial of their foolishness, so that in the things wherein they offended, they could not so much as be hid. But wisdom delivered from pain those that attended upon her. When the righteous fled from his brother's wrath, she guided him in right paths, showed him the kingdom of God, and gave him knowledge of holy things, made him rich in his travels, and multiplied the fruit of his labors. In the covetousness of such as oppressed him, she... So obviously this is going through Abraham, Lot, Jacob,
In the cup.
Laban.
In the cup.
There we are. And again, if we were sort of translating this for our own language, it would be the Holy Spirit guiding this person, being with a person, if not necessarily indwelling.
Of his labors.
In the covetousness of such as oppressed him, she stood by him and made him rich. She defended him from his enemies and kept him safe from those that lay in wait. And in a sore conflict she gave him the victory, that he might know that goodness is stronger than all. When the righteous was sold, she forsook him not, but delivered him from sin. Deliver him. I don't like the way I delivered that word.
When the
righteous. When the righteous was sold, she forsook him not, but delivered him from sin. She went down with him into the pit, and left him not in bonds, till she brought him the scepter of the kingdom and power against those that oppressed him. As for them that had accused him, she showed them to be liars, and gave him perpetual glory. She delivered the righteous people and blameless seed from the nation that oppressed them. She entered into the soul of the servant of the Lord, and withstood dreadful kings in wonders and signs, rendered to the righteous a reward of their labors, guided them in a marvelous way, and was unto them for a cover by day, and a light of stars in the night season, brought them through the Red Sea, and led them through much water. And she drowned their enemies, and cast them up the bottom of the deep. Out the bottom of the deep.
brought them through the Red
Brought them through the Red Sea, and led them through much water. But she drowned their enemies, and cast them up out of the bottom of the deep. Therefore the righteous spoiled the ungodly, and praised thy holy name, O Lord, and magnified with one accord thine hand that fought for them. For wisdom opened the mouth of the dumb, and made the tongues of them that cannot speak eloquent. Eloquate. Locutus. Chapter 11. 11. A little bit of 11. She prospered their works in the hand of the holy prophet. They went through the wilderness that was not inhabited, and pitched tents in places where there lay no way. They stood against their enemies, and were avenged of their adversaries. When they were thirsty, they called upon thee, and water was given them out of the flinty rock, and their thirst was quenched out of the hard stone. For by what things their enemies were punished, by the same they in their need were benefited. For instead of a perpetual running river, troubled with foul blood, for a manifest reproof of what for a manifest Destiny's manifest. For a manifest reproof of that commandment, whereby the infants were slain, thou gavest unto them abundance of water by a means which they hoped not for. Did I get that right?
river, troubled with foul blood, for a manifest
Declaring by that thirst, then, how thou hast punished their adversaries. For when they were tried, albeit but in mercy chastised, they knew how the ungodly were judged in wrath and tormented, thirsting in another manner than the just. For these thou didst admonish and try as a father, but the other as a severe king thou didst condemn and punish. Let's try that again a little bit.
But the other,
Go back a little bit.
for these
For these thou didst admonish and try as a father, but the other as a severe king thou didst condemn and punish. Whether they were absent or present, they were vexed alike, for a double grief came upon them, and a groaning for the remembrance of things past. And when they heard by their own punishments the other to be benefited, they had some feeling of the Lord, for whom they respected with scorn, when he was long before thrown out at the casting forth of the infants, him in the end, when they saw what came to pass, they admired. But for the foolish devices of their wickedness, wherewith being deceived, they worshipped serpents void of reason, and vile beasts, thou didst send a multitude of unreasonable beasts upon them for vengeance, that they might know that wherewithal a man sinneth, by the same also shall he be punished. For thy almighty hand that made the world of matter without form wanted not means to send among them a multitude of bears or fierce lions or unknown wild beasts full of rage, newly created, breathing out either a fiery vapor or filthy scents of scattered smoke, or shooting horrible sparkles out of their eyes, whereof not only the harm might dispatch them at once, but also the terrible sight utterly destroy them. Yea, and without these might they have fallen down with one blast, being persecuted of vengeance and scattered abroad through the breadth of thy power. But thou hast ordered all things in measure and number and weight. For thou canst show thy great strength at all times when thou wilt. And who may withstand the power of thine arm? For the whole world before thee is as a little grain of the balance, yea, as a drop of the morning dew that falleth down upon the earth. But thou hast mercy upon all, for thou canst do all things, and winkest at the sins of men, because they should amend. For thou lovest all the things that are, and abhorrest nothing which thou hast made. For never wouldst thou have made anything if thou hadst hated it. And how could anything have endured if it had not been by thy will, or been preserved, if not called by thee? But thou sparest all, for they are thine, O Lord, thou lover of souls. (44:22). Yes. Split rock at Horeb. And onward to chapter 12. Chapter 12. For thine incorruptible spirit is in all things. Therefore chasteneth thou them by little and little that offend, and warnest them by putting them in remembrance wherein they have offended, that leaving their wickedness they may believe on thee, O Lord. For it was thy will to destroy by the hands of our fathers both those old inhabitants of thy holy land, whom thou hatedst.
For it was thy
For it was thy will to destroy by the hands of our fathers both those old inhabitants of thy holy land, whom thou hatedst, whom thou hatedst, I can't do it, hatedst, whom thou hatedst, Lord, give me strength.
on thee, O Lord.
For it was thy will to destroy by the hands of our fathers both those old inhabitants of thy holy land, whom thou hatest for doing most odious works of witchcrafts and wicked sacrifices, and also those merciless murderers of children and devourers of man's flesh and feasts of blood, with their priests out of the midst of their idolatrous. Man, I'm just.
And also those merciless.
And also. And also. And also those merciless murderers of children and devourers, and also those merciless murderers of children and devourers of man's flesh and feasts of blood, with their priests out of the midst of their idolatrous crew, and the parents that killed with their own hands souls destitute of help, that the land which thou esteemest above all other might receive a worthy colony of God's children. Nevertheless, even those thou sparest as men, and didst send wasps, forerunners of thine host, to destroy them by little and little. Not that thou wast unable to bring the ungodly under the hand of the righteous in battle, or to destroy them at once with cruel beasts, or with one rough word, but some more. Dihydrogen monoxide.
With one rough word.
But executing thy judgments upon them by little and little, thou gavest them place of repentance, not being ignorant that they were a naughty generation, and that their malice was bred in them, and that their cogitation would never be changed. For it was a cursed seed from the beginning. Neither didst thou, for fear of any man, give them pardon for those things wherein they sinned. For who shall say, what hast thou done? Or who shall withstand thy judgment? Or who shall accuse thee for the nations that perish, whom thou made? Or who shall come to stand against thee, to be revenged for the unrighteous men? For neither is there any God but thou, that careth for all, to whom the mightiest show that thy judgment is not unright. Let's try that a little bit again.
For neither
For neither something or other. For neither is there any God but thou that careth for all, to whom thou mightest show that thy judgment is not unright. Neither shall king or tyrant be able to set his face against thee for any whom thou hast punished. For so much then as thou art righteous thyself, thou orderest all things righteously, thinking it not agreeable with thy power to condemn him that hath not deserved to be punished. To be punished. Let's try that again.
for so
For so much then, as thou art righteous thyself, thou orderest all things righteously, thinking it not agreeable with thy power to condemn him that hath not deserved to be punished. For thy power is the beginning of righteousness, and because thou art the Lord of all, it maketh thee to be gracious unto all. For when men will not believe that thou art of a full power, thou showest thy strength, and among them that know it, thou makest them. Wow, man.
for when men
Why did this suddenly seem to get really, really Shakespearean?
gracious unto all.
For when men will not believe that thou art of a full power, thou showest thy strength, and among them that know it, thou makest their boldness manifest. But thou, mastering thy power, judgest with equity, and orderest us with great favor. For thou mayest use power when thou wilt. But by such works hast thou taught thy people that the just man should be merciful, and hast made thy children to be of a good hope, that thou givest repentance for sins. For if thou didst punish the enemies of thy children, and the condemned to death with such deliberation, giving them time and place whereby they might be delivered from their malice, with how great circumspection didst thou join
With ha- giving them
with how, let's make sure that that's the right one.
delivered from their malice.
With how great circumspection did thou judge thine own sons, unto whose fathers thou hast sworn and made covenants of good promises. Therefore, whereas thou dost oh boy,
Therefore,
it is therefore, not wherefore, yeah. Therefore, whereas thou dost chasten us, thou scourgest our enemies 1,000 times more, to the intent that when we judge, we should carefully think of thy goodness, and when we ourselves are judged.
therefore,
All right, let's do it again. Therefore, whereas thou dost chasten us, thou scourgest our enemies 1,000 times more, to the intent that when we judge, we should carefully think of thy goodness, and when we ourselves are judged, we should look for mercy. Wherefore, whereas men have lived dissolutely and unrighteously, thou hast tormented them with their own abominations. For they went astray very far in the ways of error, and held them for gods, which even among the beasts of their enemies were despised, being deceived as children of no understanding. Therefore, unto them, as to children without the use of reason, thou didst send a judgment to mock them. But they that would not be reformed by that correction, wherein he dallied with them, shall field a...
But they
But they... But they that would not be reformed by that correction, wherein he dallied with them, shall feel a judgment worthy of God. For, look, for what things they grudged when they were punished, that is, for them whom they thought to be gods, now being punished in them, when they saw it, they acknowledged him to be the true God, whom before they denied to know, and therefore came extreme damnation upon them. For look for what things they grudged when they... All right, it's good enough. Good enough for government work. So we are going to go to the 13th chapter. Yeah. Chapter 13. Surely vain are all men by nature, who are ignorant of God. Oh, that's stipulation. Not all men, just all men that are ignorant of God. Surely vain are all men by nature who are ignorant of God, and could not, out of the good things that are seen, know him that is. Neither by considering the works did they acknowledge the workmaster, but deemed either fire or wind, or the swift air, or the circle of the stars, or the violent water, or the lights of heaven, to be the gods which govern the world. With whose beauty, if they, being delighted, took them to be gods, let them know how much better the Lord of them is. For the first author of beauty hath created them. But if they were astonished at the power and virtue, let them understand by them how much mightier he is that made them. For by the greatness and beauty of the creatures proportionably the maker of them is seen. And yet, but yet, and yet, but yet. But yet, for this, they are the less to be blamed, for they peradventure err, seeking God, and desirous to find him. For being conversant in his works, they search him diligently, and believe their sight, because the things are beautiful that are seen. Howbeit neither are they to be pardoned. Howbeit neither are they to be pardoned. For if they were able to know so much that they could aim at the world, how did they not sooner find out the Lord thereof? But miserable are they, and in dead things is their hope, who call them gods, which are the works of men's hands, gold and silver, to show art in, and resemblances of beasts, or a stone good for nothing, the work of an ancient hand. Now a carpenter that felleth timber, after he hath sawn down a tree meet for the purpose, and taken off all the bark skillfully round about, and hath wrought it handsomely, and made a vessel thereof fit for the service of man's life, and after spending the refuse of his work to dress his meat, hath filled himself, and taking the very refuse among those which serve to no use, being a crooked piece of wood, and full of knots, hath carved it diligently when he hath nothing else to do, and formed it by the skill of his understanding, and fashioned it into the image of a man, or made it like some vile beasts, laying it over with vermilion, with and with paint coloring it red, and covering every spot therein. And when he had made a convenient room for it, set it in a wall, and made it fast with iron. For he provided for it that it might not fall, knowing that it was unable to help itself, for it is an image, and hath need of help. Then maketh he prayer for his goods, for his wife and children, and is not ashamed to speak to that which hath no life.
And is not
And is not ashamed to speak to that which hath no life. For health he calleth upon that which is weak. For life prayeth to that which is dead. For aid humbly beseecheth that which hath least means to help. And for a good journey he asketh of that which cannot set a foot forward. And for gaining and getting, and for good success of his hands, asketh ability to do of him that is most unable to do anything. I'm gonna go and get some more water really quickly. Be right back. Here, learn some more Saturday morning wisdom from. Did I just cut myself off? No.
Here's orange juice and milk and fruit just waiting to be taken. And bless my soul, right here's a bowl with one cold piece of steak in, a hard-boiled egg or chicken leg or cheese or luncheon meat, or a peanut butter sandwich. Any time of day is a treat. So to keep your mom from grumbling and stop that stomach rumbling and keep your legs from stumbling when you play, you gotta eat some kind of breakfast every day. Yuck! Oh, come on! Don't knock it till you try it. Put a little on your plate. Don't make a face before you taste it. Some kids think it's great. Why don't you try a smorgasbord dinner, which means a smidgen of this and a squidgen of that. Don't knock it till you try it. Eating can be fun, with little bites of different things instead of lots of one. Don't quibble till you nibble, a dabble or a dibble of everything that's on your plate, and then go back and eat the things you like again. Hey, kid, have a carrot. A carrot?
Carrot sticks are yes, indeed. They are delicious. If you must eat in between meals, why not eat nutritious dishes? Like fill a bowl with ice cubes and add raw cauliflower. Stuff celery with cheese and let it chill for half an hour. Add carrot sticks and olives and any other knickknacks. Then keep this by the TV set for when you want those quick snacks. Well,
I'm waiting. Could you make me a banana?
Okay, you're a banana. Hi, time for timer, and time to make a week's supply of healthy after-school snacks. Now some weekend when it's raining and your mother is complaining because you're hanging around just twiddling your thumbs. Tell your mom that you've been itching to make something in the kitchen, and oh yes, the mess will be a minimum. But the thing that's going to please her is you make it in the freezer, and nothing could be easier to fix. Now just watch as I go through it. Really, all you need to do it is some kind of juice and just a few toothpicks.
All right. Some Saturday morning wisdom there, along with our Solomon morning wisdom. Hello, Sir Pierce the Veil. God bless. Good morning, etc. Assuming it's your morning. Happy day. Good day. All right.
Anything.
If I keep itching my face, it's because I'm horribly sunburned. It's only just begun. Chapter 14.
Anything. Chapter 14.
54 minutes, 10 seconds. We are. Again, one preparing himself to sail. Sorry, this is probably talking about. Starting. Again, one preparing himself to sail and about to pass through the. Start again. Again, one preparing himself to sail and about to pass through the raging waves calleth upon a piece of wood more rotten than the vessel that carrieth him. For verily desire of gain devised that, and the workman built it by his skill. But thy providence, O Father, governeth it. For thou hast made a way in the sea, and a safe path in the waves, showing that thou canst save all. Showing that thou canst save from all danger. Yea, though a man went to sea without art. Nevertheless, thou wouldest not that the works of thy wisdom should be idle, and therefore do men commit their lives to a small piece of wood, and passing the rough sea in a weak vessel are saved. For in the old time also, when the proud giants perished, the hope of the world governed by thy hand escaped in a weak vessel, and left to all ages a seed of generation. For blessed is the wood whereby righteousness cometh. Once again, I'm completely amazed that this is not written by Christians, because from reading all the early church writings, whenever they're referring back to the Old Testament, usually when there's any mention of wood whatsoever, they're like, this is the cross. This is obviously for seeing the cross. And usually they would appear to be correct. And so here again, I mean, the symbolism of of Noah and the ark and the wood there was one thing as well. But again, here it's just like, blessed is the wood whereby righteousness cometh.
For blessed is the wood whereby righteousness cometh.
For blessed is the wood whereby blah. For blessed is the wood whereby righteousness. All right, I should have just kept the original. For blessed is the wood whereby righteousness cometh. But that which is made with hands is cursed, as well it as he that made it. He because he made it, and it because being corruptible it was called God. For the ungodly and his ungodliness are both alike hateful unto God. For that which is made shall be punished together with him that made it. Therefore, even upon the idols of the Gentiles shall there be a visitation, because in the creature of God they are become an abomination and stumbling blocks to the souls of men, and a snare to the feet of the unwise. For the devising of idols was the beginning of spiritual fornication, and the invention of them the corruption of life. For neither were they from the beginning, neither shall they be forever. For by the vain glory of men they entered into the world, and therefore shall they come shortly to an end. For a father afflicted with untimely mourning, when he hath made an image of his child soon taken away, now honored him as a god, which was then a dead man, and delivered to those that were under him ceremonies and sacrifices. Thus, in process of time, an ungodly custom grown strong was kept as a law, and graven images were worshipped by the commandments of kings, whom men could not honor in presence because they dwelt far off. They took the counterfeit of his visage. Let's try that again.
Whom men could not.
Whom men could not honor in presence because they dwelt far off. They took the counterfeit of his visage from far, and made an express image of a king whom they honored, to the end that by this their forwardness they might flatter him that was absent, as if he were present. Also, the singular diligence of the artificer did help to set forward the ignorant to more superstition. For he, peradventure, willing to please one in authority, forced all his skill to make the resemblance of the best fashion. And so the multitude, allured by the grace of the work, took him now for a god, which a little before was but honored. And this was an occasion to deceive the world, for men, serving either calamity or tyranny, did ascribe unto stones and stocks the incommunicable name. Moreover, this was not enough for them. The incommunicable name.
For men
For men serving either calamity or tyranny did ascribe unto stones and stocks the incommunicable name. Hashem. Moreover, this was not enough for them, that they erred in the knowledge of God, but whereas they lived in a great Try that again. Moreover, this was not enough for them, that they erred in the knowledge of God, but whereas they lived in the great war of ignorance, those so great plagues they called. What is this saying? Or this was not enough for them, that they erred in the knowledge of God, but whereas they lived in the great war of ignorance, those so great plagues called they peace. Moreover, this was not enough for them, that they erred in the knowledge of God, but whereas they lived in the great war of ignorance, those so great plagues called they peace. For whilst they slew their children in sacrifice, or used secret ceremonies, or made revelings of strange rites, they kept neither lives nor marriages any longer undefiled, but either one slew another traitorously, or grieved him by adultery. So that there reigned in all men, without exception, blood, manslaughter, theft, and dissimulation, corruption, unfaithfulness, tumults, and perjury. There's no and.
Unfaithfulness,
Tumults. Unfaithfulness, tumults, perjury, disquieting of good men, forgetfulness of good turns, defiling of souls, changing of kind, disorder in marriages, adultery, and shameless uncleanness. Changing of kind. Would that be like furries? So there are furries in Alexandria? No doubt.
corruption, unfaithfulness, tumults, so that there reigned in all men with.
I'm going to do that whole thing over again. I don't like the pause. So that there reigned in all men without exception blood, manslaughter, theft, and dissimulation, corruption, unfaithfulness, tumults, perjury, disquieting of good men, forgetfulness of good turns, defiling of souls, changing of kind, disorder in marriages, adultery, and shameless uncleanness. For the worshipping of idols, not to be named, is the beginning, the cause, and the end of all evil. For either they are mad when they be merry, or prophesy lies, or prophesy.
For I.
For either they are mad when they be merry, or prophesy lies, or live unjustly, or else lightly forswear themselves. For inasmuch as their trust is in idols, which have no life, though they swear falsely, yet they look not to be hurt. Howbeit for both causes shall they be justly punished, both because they thought not well of God, giving heed unto idols, and also unjustly swore in deceit, despising holiness. For it is not the power of them by whom they swear, but it is the just vengeance of sinners that punisheth always the offense of the ungodly. Okay. Hey. Saints rising. Guten Morgen. Talking about the punishment of the ungodly for the morning, Saturday morning, almost afternoon. It's interesting how people still. I was talking to somebody recently, last night. It was, I assume, an atheist. But the notion that when God punishes something, or when God goes against something, that they can say, "Oh well, God does evil." If God is doing evil, what's called evil, or doing a calamity to the evil, the unjust, the unrighteous, that is a good thing. So to just peg all violence in general, because again, to do violence in this for the sake of righteousness, again, and because again, this argument was probably more on the cause of people slaughtering the Amalekites and that sort of thing. Because I mean, the way that we do violence against unrighteousness is spreading the gospel and speaking truth. All right, so we're on the chapter 15. I just do this same one. Let me go back. Let me see something. Is this 15?
Chapter 14.
There's chapter 14. And blah, blah, blah. Where is 15? Just a second. Sorry, I need to make sure I don't mix these up again.
Moreover,
Hold up, I just finished one thing.
that punisheth always the offense of the ungodly.
So I'm on 15. Okay. Chapter 15. Right? Why does it sound wrong? Right, well, at least that part's right. All right. A couple more chapters to go. Maybe I will finish it. This one, I think when I put this one out, I'm not going to make it fancy. I'm just going to put it out with a flat thumbnail. Because those really short ones, like the short Hippolytus against the Jews, which is actually just a witness using Psalm 69 to prove to them that Jesus is Messiah. I actually want to make that into like a short, 10-minute Bible study, basically putting every single verse as it's being explained on the screen. Same way with the treatise against Plato, which is really, again, I think it's just a gospel tractate for pagan Greeks.
Chapter 15.
But thou But thou, O God, art gracious. But thou, O God, art gracious and true, long-suffering, and in mercy, ordering all things. For if we sin, we are thine, knowing thy power. But when we will not sin, knowing that we are counted thine. For to know thee is perfect righteousness. Yea, to know thy power is the root of immortality. For neither did the mischievous invention of men deceive us, nor an image spotted with diverse colors, the painter's fruitless labor, the sight whereof enticeth fools to lust after it, and so they desire the form of a dead image that hath no breath. Both they that make them, they that desire them, and they that worship them are lovers of evil things, and are worthy to have such things to trust upon. For the potter, tempering soft earth, fashioneth every vessel with much labor for our service. Yea, of the same clay he maketh both the vessels that serve for clean uses, and likewise also all such as serve to the contrary. But what is the use of either sort? The potter himself is the judge. And employing his labors lewdly, he maketh a vain god of the same clay, even he which a little before was made of earth himself, and within a little while after returneth to the same, out when his life which was lent him shall be demanded. Notwithstanding his care is, not that he shall have much labor, nor that his life is short, but striveth to excel goldsmiths and silversmiths, and endeavoureth to do like the workers in brass, and counteth it. Let's go over.
Notwithstanding
Notwithstanding, his care is, not that he shall have much labor, nor that his life is short, but striveth to excel goldsmiths and silversmiths, and endeavoureth to do like the workers in brass, and counteth it to his same exact spot.
and count
See, there's not a
to do like the work and notwithstanding
Notwithstanding, his care is, not that he shall have much labor, nor that his life is short, but striveth to excel goldsmiths and silversmiths, and endeavouring to do like the workers in brass, and counteth it his glory to make counterfeit things. His heart is ashes, his hope is more vile than earth, and his life of less value than clay. Forasmuch as he knew not his Maker, and him that inspired into him an active soul, and breathed in a living spirit, but they counted our life a pastime, and our time here a market for gain. For say they, we must be getting every way, though it be by evil means. For this man, that of earthly matter, maketh brittle vessels and graven images, knoweth himself to offend above all others. And all the enemies of thy people that hold them in subjection are most foolish, and are more miserable than very babes. For they counted all the idols of the heathen to be gods, which neither have the use of eyes to see, nor noses to draw breath, nor ears to hear, nor fingers of hands to handle. And as for their feet, they are slow to go. For man made them, and he that borrowed his own spirit fashioned them. But no man can make a god like unto himself. For being mortal, he worketh a dead thing with wicked hands, for he himself is better than the things which he worshippeth. Whereas he lived once, but they never. Yea, they worshipped those beasts also that are most hateful, for being compared together, some are worse than others. Neither are they beautiful, so much as to be desired in respect of beasts, but they went without the praise of God and his blessing. Take care. Sir Pierce, God bless. So much as viewed the desires, but they went without the praise of God. Chapter 16. Chapter 16. Therefore, by the like were they punished worthily, and by the multitude of beasts tormented. Instead of which, beast. Therefore, by the like were they punished worthily, and by the multitude of beasts tormented. Instead of which punishment, dealing graciously with thine own people, thou preparedst for them meat of a strange taste, even quails to stir up their appetite, to the end that they, desiring food, might, for the ugly sight of the beasts sent among them, loathe even
Stir up their appetite.
Let them eat quail till it comes out of their nostrils.
Appetite.
To the end that they, desiring food, might for the ugly sight of the beasts sent among them loathe even that, which they must needs desire. But these, suffering penury for a short space, might be made partakers of a strange taste. For it was requisite that upon them exercising tyranny should come penury, which they could not avoid. But to these it should only be showed how their enemies were tormented. Am I saying that right? Penury? Penury. Thinking like jury, penury.
Penury.
Yeah.
These were tormented.
For when the horrible fierceness of beasts came upon these, and they perished with the stings of crooked serpents, they For when the horrible fierceness of beasts came upon these, and they perished with the stings of crooked serpents, thy wrath endured not forever. But when they were troubled for a small season, that they might be admonished, having a sign of salvation, to put them in remembrance of thy commandments of thy law. Who got that wrong?
But when they were
But when?
wrath, for when the horrible fierceness of beasts came not forever,
But they were troubled for a small season, that they might be admonished. You know what? I'm going to do that back part again.
for when the horrible
For when the horrible fierceness of beasts came upon these, and they perished with the stings of crooked serpents, thy wrath endured not forever. But they were troubled for a small season, that they might be admonished, having a sign of salvation to put them in remembrance of the commandment of thy law. For he that turned himself toward it was not saved by the thing that he saw, but by thee that art the Savior of all. And in this thou madest thine enemies confess that it is thou that deliverest from all evil. For them the bitings of grasshoppers and flies killed, neither was there found any remedy for their life, for they were worthy to be punished by such. but thy sons, not the very teeth of venomous dragons overcame, for thy mercy was ever by them, and healed them. For they were pricked, that they should remember thy words, and were quickly saved, that not falling into deep forgetfulness, they might be continually mindful of thy goodness. For it was neither herb nor mollifying plaster that restored them to health. Is it plaster? Is that another word than plaster? Plaster? A mixture of, yeah, it's plaster.
For they were pricked.
Thought that over. For they were pricked, that they should remember thy words, and were quickly saved, that not falling into deep forgetfulness, they might be continually mindful of thy goodness. For it was neither herb nor mollifying plaster that restored them to health, but thy word, O Lord, which healeth all things. For thou hast power of life and death, thou leadest to the gates of hell, and bringest up again. A man indeed killeth through his malice, and the spirit, when it is gone forth, returneth not, neither the soul receiveth up, cometh again. Received up.
A man in
A man indeed killeth through his malice, and the spirit, when it is gone forth, returneth not, neither the soul received up cometh again. But it is not possible to escape thine hand. For the ungodly that denied that the ungodly
for the ungodly that
denied them up from New York. Those peoples. For the ungodly that denied to know thee were scourged by the strength of thine arm. With strange rains, hails, and showers were they persecuted, that they could not avoid, and through fire were they consumed. For which is most to be wondered at, the fire had more force in the water that quencheth.
for which it
I don't know what. For which is most to be wondered at, the fire? Fire had more force in the water that quencheth all things, for the world fighteth for righteousness. So, for which is most to be wondered at, the fire had more force in the water that quencheth all things, for the world fighteth for the righteous. For some time the flame was mitigated, that it might not burn up the beasts that were sent against the ungodly, but themselves might see and perceive that they were persecuted with the judgment of God. And at another time it burneth even in the midst of water above the power of fire, that it might destroy the fruits of an unjust land. I think it's Theophilus of Antioch says something about lightning. Might be Basil. Basically, the power of lightning has the same power of the sun. Like if whatever the power that lightning is, were not contained by God's mercy, if you just let lightning go, it would basically spread until it destroyed the whole of the earth and burn it all, which was interesting.
land.
Instead whereof thou feddest thine own people with angels' food, and didst send them from heaven bread, prepared without their labor, able to content every man content. Instead whereof thou feddest thine own people with angels' food, and didst send them from heaven bread prepared without their labor, able to content every man's delight, and agreeing to every taste. For thy sustenance declared thy sweetness unto thy children, and serving to the appetite of the eater, tempered itself to every man's liking. But snow and ice endured the fire, and melted not, that they might know that fire burning in the hail, and sparkling in the rain, did destroy the fruits of the enemies. But this again did even forget his own strength, that the righteous might be nourished. For the creature that serveth thee, who art the maker, increase. I would bet that now I can see why they think this is written by multiple people. This totally reads completely differently.
That the righteous. But this again did eat.
Yeah, because they think it's either written by a single guy or, yeah, a school of people, like a collection of writers. Yeah, this portion does like read like somebody else is sort of adding to it. But who knows? Wins, God bless you, man. Hope you are doing well.
Did destroy the fruits of the enemies.
But this again did even forget his own strength, that the righteous might be nourished. For the creature that serveth thee, who art the maker, increaseth his strength against the unrighteous for their punishment, and abateth his strength for the benefit of such as put their trust in thee. Therefore, even then was it altered into all fashions, and was obedient to thy grace, that nourisheth all things according to the desire of them that had need. That thy children, O Lord, whom thou lovest, might know that it is not the growing of fruits that nourisheth man, but that it is thy word which preserveth them that put their trust in thee. For that which was not destroyed of the fire, being warmed with a little sunbeam, soon melted away, that it might be known that we must prevent the sun to give thee thanks, and at the dayspring pray unto thee. For the hope of the unthankful shall melt away as the winter's hoarfrost, and shall run away as unprofitable water. Interesting. Chapter 17. For great are thy judgments, and cannot be expressed. Therefore, unnurtured souls have erred. For when unrighteous men thought to oppress the holy nation, they being shut up in their houses, the prisoners of darkness, and fettered with the bonds of a long night, lay there, exiled from the eternal providence. For while they supposed to lie hid in their secret sins, they were scattered under a dark veil of forgetfulness, being horribly astonished and troubled with strange apparitions. For neither might the corner that held them keep them from fear, but noises as of waters falling down sounded about them, and sad visions appeared unto them with heavy countenances. No power of the fire might give them light, neither could the bright flames of the stars endure to lighten that horrible night. Only there appeared unto them a fire kindled of itself, very dreadful. For being much terrified, they thought the things which they saw to be worse than the sight they saw not. As for the illusions of art magic, they were put down, and their vaunting in wisdom was reproved with disgrace. For they that promised to drive away terrors and troubles from a sick soul were sick themselves of fear, worthy to be laughed at. For though no terrible thing did fear them, yet being scared with beasts that passed by, and hissing of serpents, they died for fear, denying that they saw the air which could of no side be avoided. They saw the air, denying that they saw the air. That's a weird statement.
Could have no.
Denying that they saw the air which could of no side. It's the wicked air.
Side be avoided.
For wickedness, condemned by her own witness, is very timorous, and being pressed with conscience, always forecasteth grievous things. For fear is nothing else but a betraying of the succors which reason offereth, and the expectation and the expectation from within, being less, counteth the ignorance more than the cause which bringeth the torment. But they, sleeping the same sleep that night, which was indeed intolerable, and which came upon them out of the bottoms of inevitable hell, were partly vexed with monstrous apparitions, and partly fainted, their heart failing them, for a sudden fear, and not looked for, came upon them. So then, whosoever there fell down as straitly kept, shut up in a prison without iron bars, and whether he were husbandman or shepherd, or a laborer in the field, he was overtaken, and endured that necessity which could not be avoided. For they were all bound with one chain of darkness. Whether it were a whistling wind, or a melodious noise of birds among the spreading branches, or a pleasing fall of water running violently, or a terrible sound of stones cast down, or a running that could not be seen of skipping beasts, or a roaring voice of most savage wild beasts, or a rebounding echo from the hollow mountains, these things made them to swoon for fear. For the whole world shined with clear light, and none were hindered in their labor. Over them only was spread a heavy night, an image of that darkness which should afterward receive them. But
Over them only.
Over them only was spread an heavy night, an image of that darkness which should afterward receive them. But yet were they unto themselves more grievous than the darkness. Getting kind of heavy. Chapter 18. Almost there. Nevertheless, thy saints had a very great light, whose voice they hearing and not seeing their shape, because they also had not suffered the same things, they counted them happy. But for that they did not hurt them now, of whom they had been wronged before. They thanked them and besought them pardon for that they had been enemies. Instead whereof thou gavest them a burning pillar of fire, both to be a judge. Whoops. Let's go back. Instead whereof thou gavest them a burning pillar of fire, both to be a guide of the unknown journey, and an harmless sun to entertain them honorably. For they were worthy to be deprived of light, and imprisoned in darkness, who had kept thy sons shut up, by whom the uncorrupt light of the law was to be given unto the world. And when they had determined to slay the babes of the saints, one child being cast forth and saved to reprove them, thou tookest away the multitude of their children, and destroyedst them altogether. I emphasize their children there. And when they had determined to slay the babes of the saints, one child being cast forth and saved to reprove them, thou tookest away to reprove them. Getting my emphasis mixed up. And when they had determined to slay the babes of the saints, one child being cast forth and saved to reprove them, thou tookest away the multitude of their children, and destroyedst them altogether in a mighty water. Of that night were our fathers certified afore, that assuredly knowing unto what oaths they had given credence, they might afterwards be of good cheer. So of thy people was accepted both the salvation of the righteous and destruction of thine enemies. The enemies. So of thy people. Let's try that again. So of thy people was accepted both the salvation of the righteous and the destruction of the enemies. So of thy people was accepted both the salvation of the righteous and the destruction of the enemies. For wherewith thou didst punish our adversaries, by the same thou didst glorify us, whom thou hadst called. For the righteous children of good men did sacrifice secretly, and with one consent made a holy law, that the saints should be like partakers of the same good and evil, the fathers now singing out the songs of praise. But on the other side there sounded an ill according cry of the enemies, and a lamentable noise was carried abroad for children that were bewailed. But on the other side, hold up, that the saints should be like partakers of the same good and evil. So he's talking about the fact that the same city had the plagues put upon it, even though they were living in the same place. But then some came out singing songs of praise for the same event, others came out singing wailing. Trying to keep that in mind as I'm. For the righteous children of For the righteous children of good men did sacrifice secretly, and with one consent made a holy law, that the saints should be like the partakers of the same good and evil, the fathers now singing out the songs of praise. But on the other side there sounded an ill according cry of the enemies, and a lamentable noise was carried abroad for children that were bewailed. the master and the servant were punished after one manner, and like as the king, so suffered the common person. And so they all
And so
So they all together had innumerable dead with one kind of death. Neither were the living sufficient to bury them, for in one moment the noblest offspring of them was destroyed. For whereas they would not believe anything by reason of the enchantments upon the destruction of the firstborn, they acknowledged this people to be the sons of God. For while all things were in quiet silence, and that night was in the midst of her swift course, that night was in the midst of her swift course.
for while all
For while all things were in quiet silence, and that night was in the midst of her swift course, thine almighty word leaped down from heaven out of thy royal throne as a fierce man of war into the midst of a land of destruction. That's interesting because in the Hebrew, Exodus, I think it's 3:15 or 15:3, where it says, God is a man of war, or the Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. Yeah, the Lord is a man of war, which is Yahweh. Here we have the Almighty Word leaped down from heaven as a fierce man of war in the midst of the land. So this is God, thine Almighty Word, leaped down as a man of war in the midst of the land of destruction.
into the midst of a land of destruction.
And brought thine unfeigned commandment as a sharp sword, and standing up filled all things with death, and it touched the heaven, but it stood upon the earth. And brought thine unfeigned commandment as a sharp sword, and standing up filled all things with death, and it touched the heaven, but it stood upon the earth. Then suddenly visions of horrible dreams troubled them sore, and terrors came upon them unlooked for. And one thrown here and another there, half dead, showed the cause of his death. For the dreams that troubled them did foreshow this, lest they should perish and not know why they were afflicted. Yea, the tasting of death touched the righteous also, and there was a destruction of the multitude in the wilderness. So there's kind of a new thought process on them.
Yea, the yea,
Yea, the tasting of death touched the righteous also, and there was a destruction of the multitude in the wilderness, but the wrath endured not long. For then the blameless man made haste and stood forth to defend them, and bringing the shield of his proper ministry, even prayer, and the propitiation of incense, set himself against the wrath, and so brought the calamity to an end, declaring that he was thy servant. So he overcame the destroyer, not with strength of body, nor force of arms, but with a word subdued him that punished, alleging the oaths
alleging
alleging the oaths and covenants made with the fathers. For when the dead were now fallen down by heaps one upon another, standing between, he stayed the wrath and parted the way to the living. And in a, I keep saying and. For in the long garment was the whole world, and in the 4 rows of the stones was the glory of the fathers graven, and thy majesty upon the diadem on his head. Unto these the destroyer gave place, and was afraid of them, for it was enough that they only tasted of the wrath. Let's emphasize that a little differently.
Unto these
the destroyer gave place, and was afraid of them, for it was enough that they only tasted of the wrath. Almost there. Nice. Happy 4th of July. Scott, good to see you, brother. Hopefully everybody's dogs didn't freak out too bad. All right, last chapter. This whole thing's about an hour and 20-some minutes. Good, plenty of room for a scroll. Chapter 19. As for the just a moment. All right, we're gonna do it. As for the ungodly, wrath came upon them without mercy unto the end, for he knew before what they would do. For he knew before what they would do. Right? As for the ungodly, wrath came upon them without mercy unto the end, for he knew before what they would do. How that, having given them leave to depart, and sent them hastily away, they would repent and pursue them. For whilst they were yet mourning and making lamentation at the graves of the dead, they added another foolish device, and pursued them as fugitives, whom they had entreated to be gone. No, I don't like that reading. As for the ungodly, wrath came upon them without mercy unto the end, for he knew before what they would do. How that, having given them leave to depart, and sent them hastily away, they would repent and pursue them. For whilst they were yet mourning and making lamentation at the graves of the dead, they added another foolish device, and pursued them as fugitives, whom they had entreated to be gone. For the destiny whereof they were worthy drew them unto this end, and made them forget destiny of which they were worthy.
For the
Destiny of which they were worthy. It's pretty rough. For the destiny whereof they were worthy drew them unto this end, and made them forget things that had already happened, that they might fulfill the punishment which was wanting to their torments, and that thy people might pass a wonderful way, but they might find a strange death. For the whole creature in his proper kind was fashioned again anew, serving the peculiar commandments that were given unto them, that thy children might be kept without hurt, as namely a cloud shadowing the camp, and where water stood before, dry land appeared out of the Red Sea, a way without impediment, and out of the violent stream a green field, wherethrough all the people went that were defended with thy hand, seeing thy marvelous strange wonders. For they went at large like horses, and leaped like lambs, praising thee, O Lord, who hadst delivered them. For they were yet mindful of those things that were done while they sojourned in the strange land, how the ground brought forth flies instead of cattle, and how the river cast up a multitude of frogs instead of fishes. But afterwards they saw a new generation of fowls, when being led with their appetite, they asked delicate meats, for quails came up unto them from the sea for their contentment. And punishments came upon the sinners, not without former signs, by the force of thunders. For they suffered justly according to their own wickedness, insomuch as they used a more hard and hateful behavior toward strangers. For the Sodomites did not receive those whom they knew not when they came, but these brought friends into bondage that had well deserved of them. And not only so, but peradventure some respect shall be had of those, because they used strangers not friendly, but these very grievously.
but thee,
But these very grievously afflicted them whom they had received with feastings, and were already made partakers of the same laws with them. Therefore, even with blindness were these stricken, as those were at the doors of the righteous man, when being compassed about with horrible great darkness, every one sought the passage of his own doors. For the elements were changed in themselves by a kind of harmony, like as in a psaltery notes change the name of the tune, and yet are always sounds, which may be well perceived by the sight of the things that have been done. For earthly things were turned into watery, and the things that before swam in the water now went upon the ground. The fire had power in the water, forgetting his own virtue, and the water forgat his own quenching nature. On the other side, the flames wasted not the flesh of the corruptible living things, though they walked therein, neither melted they the icy kind of heavenly meat that was of nature apt to melt. For in all things, O Lord, thou didst magnify thy people and glorify them, neither didst thou lightly regard them, but didst thou
but this
but didst assist them in every time and place. It's a weird ending. For starships. For all things, O Lord, thou didst magnify. Is that all right for an ending?
For in all things, O Lord, thou didst magnify thy people and glorify them, neither didst thou lightly regard them.
For in all things, O Lord, thou didst magnify thy people and glorify them, neither didst thou lightly regard them, but didst thou... But, all right, I'm just the whole line. Whole line's got to go in. This is the last one. I got to do it right. For in all things, O Lord, so I'm going to put a larger gap between that and the last thing. For in all things, O Lord, thou didst magnify thy people and glorify them, neither didst thou lightly regard them, but didst assist them in every time and place. One hour and 25 minutes. Every time and place. Trying to see if that sort of...
Wasted not the flesh of the corruptible living things, though they walked therein, neither melted they the icy kind of heavenly meat that was of nature apt to melt. For in all things, O Lord, thou didst magnify...
Yeah, I'm going to do that last part again. And the part before that, because I wasn't quite understanding what I was reading.
On the other side,
Kind of was.
the fire...
Starting with the fire. The fire had power in the water, forgetting his own virtue, and the water forgat his own quenching nature.
went upon the ground. The fire...
On the other side, the flames wasted not the flesh of the corruptible living things, though they walked therein. Neither melted they the icy kind of heavenly meat that was of the nature apt to melt. For in all things, O Lord, thou didst magnify thy people and glorify them. But, okay, stop right there. And glorify them. Glorify them. Neither didst thou lightly regard them, but didst assist them in every time and place. And we're still at 1 minute and 25 seconds. And I'm going to export the audio. Wisdom of Psalms. So remember, this isn't Psalm of Psalms, it's Wisdom of Solomon. Let's just replace it. A 2nd century. And again, yeah, I mean, I tried looking up every different source for this that, you know, it does seem to be a Jewish work. Although I did find some people saying Like, the only people that really seem to bring this up are Christians, like this work, because it's so greatly seen. But again, that would make sense to me too, that Jews, because the fact that Jews like would have completely started reinterpreting a good portion of the Psalms and prophets away from the Messiah or from Jesus, because people were bringing up that they would also distance themselves from this work and just say, no, this was just done by a bunch of hippies, and not true Israelites. It seems to wrap up really quickly, like because that's the thing. It's suddenly at like a second part started to just recount the plagues. That's why it seems kind of like a general. It got a lot more. Well, I don't know. I don't want to say it got more Jewish because the whole thing was Jewish. So yeah. So how long we got here? We're about 2 hours. All right. I think I'm gonna wrap it up there. And God bless yous. Tonight, 9 o'clock, so 9 hours from now. Thanks. Yeah, some of this reminds me of like reading back in like high school. I remember doing like play readings where if you messed up like one word, they'd make you go back throughout like to the beginning of the act. And it's sort of like, and it's like, all right, and then when you go back, it gives you an opportunity to sort of say it better. But yeah, I kind of want to read some more stuff. I don't really necessarily want to end it. I think I had like 3 hours left on the stream, but it'd be cool to have like an extra like hour maybe. But yeah, so we're gonna do book 10. So the last book of Hippolytus, Refutation of Heresies, tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern time. That's about an hour and a half, I believe. And he basically recounts all of the previous books and sort of reviews them. And then he explains his own view, which he goes on this very weird description of his Logos view, which I disagree with his characterization of, but it is what it is. I hope you guys are well. Thank you for fellowship and company. God bless. Hope you all stay safe and had a happy holiday, etc. Or happy 4th of July. I consider it a holy day, but And yeah, so yeah, hopefully see y'all tonight at 9 if you're interested in such things. Other than that, I will see you around if I do not see you in the air. God bless and take care.